Yes, hello folks, welcome to the weekly Manchester United show. I'm your host as always, Phil Brown. Joined with my regular co-host here, the handsome Colm. How you doing, mate?
All good, mate. How's things? Not too good actually after that result, but we'll get there. Like,
Yeah, we'll get. I'm not sure how to feel about that result. Because it could have been worse, could have been better. I think accentuated by the fact that Rashford missed a chance in the last minute that, quite frankly, was a disgrace.
yeah,
Shouldn't be missed at this level. And if that goes in, we're having a whole different discussion today about what a brilliant result, what a brilliant performance, or second half performance anyway, against a very good team, Newcastle team that has the best defence in the league. Of course, Everton had that the week before, and United really scored three away from home. Lots to talk about the weekend, of course, the result, the once again focus on what is an absolutely disgraceful refereeing performance. Um, We've Ronaldo's reaction, Fred's miss, and we'll talk about some other topics related to the football club. Your internet's a bit jumpy, mate, so if you cut out, we'll just reconnect. But first of all, mate, what is your reaction to the game of the weekend?
have to say I was wrong. I came on this podcast and said it should be an easy game. We should win 3 or 4, and it was shocking performance all around. Well, see, to be honest, the performance wasn't that bad. If we're actually
Mm.
looking at it, the performance was okay. We just couldn't finish a barn door. I mean, decisions. I think it's okay for us to be able to say Ten Hag has made some wrong decisions without wanting Ten Hag
Of
out. And
course,
I
of
think that's
course.
important that you're able to criticize the manager without thinking that he shouldn't be the manager, because a lot of people then get their backs up and say, "Oh, why are you attacking the manager?" But I do think he made some wrong decisions in that game. I mean, Fred was
What would you?
horrendous.
Yeah.
Fred,
Hmm.
Fred was horrendous, and I've stuck up for Fred, and I think he is actually there is a player there. But again, with Fred, he's too hot and cold. Is he the midfielder that is going to bring us to win a title? Probably not. He's not good enough at that level. Is he a midfielder that would play decent week in week out for Southampton or for the likes of Everton? Yes, probably. But like some of the decisions we made, like taking off Ronaldo when you need a goal, that to me didn't make sense. If
Hmm.
Ronaldo has that chance, and I know if your granny had balls should be your granddad, but if Ronaldo had that chance that Rashford had, it was a goal. It's
I
simple
think
as
so
that.
too. I think you would
And
agree, mate.
I think taking Ronaldo off, I can understand his frustration when you're chasing the game. To me, that's just like losing that point. So why not just go all out for it? Because see, if you get beat on the counter, you get beat on the counter. It's only a point lost. That was 2 points gained if you had have changed it. Brought Ronaldo on for a holding midfielder. Brought Ronaldo on for someone, or brought Rashford on for someone else, rather than taking off Ronaldo. To me, that was just the wrong decision.
Here's a couple of things. First of all, Ronaldo had 70 minutes to score and didn't. So the argument that he would have taken that Rashford chance, whilst he probably would have, wasn't a reason for me to leave him on the pitch. He put in another performance that once again showed that for top class defenders, he's relatively easy to handle. He'll still score goals if you give him space. If he catches you out on a mistake or a counter attack, what have you. But when you're dominating the game like United were second half, and you saw this against Nicosia in the first half away, United have problems breaking teams down. I would also say that I understand going balls to the wall trying to win the game, but Newcastle posed a very serious threat on the counter attack. And if Ten Hag had lost that game, he would have taken enormous criticism, especially if he took risks and lost the game. So I can understand it. Rashford was in decent form, to be fair. I think what you saw with Fred, the contrast between him and Ericsson is absolutely unbelievable. And Luke Shaw done an interview today or yesterday with Guardian, and he said something that I had mentioned last week that I'd noticed that this is a team picked on merit. This is not a team picked on past reputation. This is not a team picked on personal vendettas or anything like that. This is a team picked on merit. That means Ronaldo has to adhere to that too. He deserved to be taken off in that game. And let's be honest, if United have a top class striker, Ronaldo doesn't start anyway. Right? If Martial's fit, he's not in the picture. His attitude coming off was a disgrace, in my opinion. It's a petulant child. And here's the thing: Ronaldo's always been about winning for himself. And it just so happens that your interests align, so your team wins too, and that makes him happy. But if Ronaldo can't score, Ronaldo doesn't care whether you win or lose. If Ronaldo's not the centre of attention, Ronaldo doesn't care. And that's great when you're 26 and you're dominating world football. But when you're 37 and you're being carried somewhat, you really don't have the capital to behave like that, because you're not doing enough on the pitch for that juice to be worth the squeeze. So I don't appreciate that attitude. No one likes being taken off in the game. Nobody. And I've seen Sancho throw the head down. Oh, that's part of being the disappointment's part of the game. But the camera panned him about 5 minutes later, and he's still shaking his head on the bench. Paul, it's not a war crime to take you off in a match you haven't scored in 70 minutes where you were poor, by the way. Right? So, anyway, as for Fred, I've seen the best of Fred and I've seen the worst of Fred. I was watching the Liverpool-Man City game, and I was watching Foden, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, mate. And then you're trying to watch Fred. Now, I've seen the best and the worst of him, and we're using terms like there's a player in there, he could do a job for you. Yeah, sure, but that's not what we should be judging footballers by at Manchester United. I mean, if we're going to sit here and talk about being the biggest football club in the world and we should demand to win trophies, we can't be working with players that can do a job for you. They can't be starting games. And I honestly feel that if United give Ten Hag the ability to make these changes, these players won't be here. I mean, Fred hasn't played that much this season. He's probably the fifth choice midfielder. So I think Ten Hag's already made his mind up about him. And if he's allowed to replace players this summer with the same figure that he was allowed to do this summer, I would imagine Fred would be on that list of players to be replaced.
I agree with what you're saying. First of all, I know that the comments are having to go up my mustache. You need to be over 18 to look at it, so I apologise for that, lads. But in terms of Fred, right? So, first of all, on Ronaldo, actually. So, what you said about Ronaldo there, how do we know that it's not Ronaldo that's disappointed in his own performance, and that's why he's reacting like he is? That he knows he's not at that level? Because we don't know what he's thinking. We're just automatically thinking it's against the manager. But is it Ronaldo that's really just he knows in his head he's not at that level and he's trying his hardest and he's not making it? Or is it the Ronaldo we seen 5-6 years ago throwing his hands up because he's getting taken off? I don't know. And even if it is that guy, I like that Ronaldo because it shows he still cares.
I have no problems with players still caring, right? I have no problem with players not wanting to be taken off. But when you do that and you show that level of petulance, it's so disrespectful to your teammates, to the player coming on, to your manager, everyone else. And I don't think Ronaldo, in his mind, believes he isn't the best striker in the world. I honestly think that he still believes that. The personality that he has that made him great hasn't disappeared. And I don't believe for 1 minute, especially when you look at his behaviour over the summer and his subsequent behaviour to get out, where he's turning around and saying, this is a me problem. Definitely not. I don't see that at all. I mean, I think obviously there's frustration on his part, but if you saw him against Nicosia, man, right? And here's the difference. You don't judge a player whether he's good enough at this level over one game. So when he scored against Everton, people say, oh, you see what I mean? You wrote him off. I didn't make that termination just because I watched him against Nicosia. This is over a significant period of time, right? And I didn't say he was crippled. He's still capable of playing football at the highest level and scoring a goal. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about whether he is a world-class striker or not, whether as a team that's serious about winning trophies, whether he belongs in that team. And I'll say the same about Fred. A team that's serious about winning trophies doesn't have Fred in their midfield.
Let's be honest, though, that there's a couple of players who aren't at world-class
levels.
No,
of course. That's fine. But those players are not behaving like Ronaldo. And those players are not on 700 grand a week. And those players are not demanding that everything inside the football club is customised to him. Those players aren't openly questioning Ten Hag's methods like Ronaldo is. Right? I mean, I'm trying to find the scales of pros and cons, and where do the pros outweigh the cons? Absolutely not anymore. And let's make this clear: the minute Manchester United no longer served Cristiano Ronaldo's needs and where he wanted to go in his career, he left. Right? So, such is life. The reverse also happens. That once you outlive your utility to a business, a football club, then there's an inevitability about what comes next. Cristiano Ronaldo replaced people at Manchester United that were in exactly the same position he was in. So he's in a position where he hasn't. His performances on the pitch don't warrant tolerating his petulance, in my opinion. But
But
I want to spend the full show talking about him.
is this not above Ronaldo? This is incompetence from above and not signing another striker, in my opinion. You can say what you want about Martial, but Martial wasn't in anyone's plans at the start of the season. Well, certainly from a fan perspective, you didn't think Martial would have featured much this year. He's looked good when he's come on, but again, can he stay fit? No. Is
Yeah.
Rashford an out and out nine? No. Who else is an out and out nine? There isn't.
There's,
When you need a goal in the last 5 minutes of a game, you need someone who's going to throw himself about the box. The only player that we had in that squad at the weekend that could have done that was Cristiano Ronaldo.
you know who's top goal scorer in Serie A?
Go.
Arnautovic. United badly need a striker. There's no question about that. They're the most expensive. They're the most expensive players in world football, and you need only look at our friends down at the Merseyside there with Darwin Nunez to show what you get. I mean,
I still think he'll come good though.
yeah, I'm not sure I share that view. I think that this is a United pod, so I don't talk about Darwin Nunez too much here, but if I see a player that's technically very good, that's getting in the right positions, it's missing chances, but doing everything right, I can say to myself, I can see where eventually he gets his confidence, things will go right. But he is so abysmal at everything that I'm going, there's a lot to get right. And then there's the mental side of it. This is a kid that in his first season at Benfica had a very similar start and deleted his social media because he couldn't take the criticism. I even see Liverpool fans laying into him, and they're notoriously loyal to their players. So I am so glad United did not sign Darwin Nunez, because if they had, and that's the performance he was putting in, if he thinks the criticism's bad now, he has no idea. I mean, Manchester United, the criticism that Manchester United get is unlike anything else. I mean, the criticism Ten Hag's taken is a disgrace, in my opinion. I mean, the man's been questioned about his dress sense, his vocabulary, his accent, all the things that are totally irrelevant. His body language on the sideline, all this nonsense. So, there's not a lot out there. I think Sesko is a player that, that chance falls to Sesko in a lot versus Rashford. I think it's in. I think that's a player United will pursue in the summer, and I think he'd be a good choice.
I think, right now we're relying on Anthony Martial to come back and save us. That's what we're relying on. We're relying on Anthony Martial to get the goals. Rashford has shown time and time again that he's not a proven goal scorer. I think, we get on his back a bit. He's a local lad, and then half the fan base, feel sorry for him. Others are very hard on him. But I personally, what does he really show you? What does he get? If he's going one-on-one with a keeper, I'm not certain he's going to score. In fact, I'm not even 60% certain he's going to score. If anything, I'm 60-70% certain he's going to miss. That's how I feel whenever a chance falls to him. Now, he's been good in previous weeks. He's done well, but of recent times, he's not done much. Look at those chances. Look at those chances on Saturday, right? Think of past strikers at Manchester United. 99% of those chances are finished, and that's the difference between what we have now and what we used to have. And whenever we're comparing ourselves to title challengers, you said something there a few minutes ago about how we need to be focusing back on competing for trophies. This team at the moment, there's no chance.
Here's the thing about Rashford for me, pros and cons. We're still talking about the same things, the same shortcomings of Marcus Rashford's game that we were talking about 3 years ago, right? That he needed to make that next jump in his development, where his conversion ratio had to be much higher, his decision making had to be better in the final third. And when I look at him, I'm like, Rashford is a good winger, but he's not a central striker. You need someone down the middle that is much more clinical. If Rashford gets you 15 to 20 goals from the left hand side, I probably think he's a better winger than Jadon Sancho. Then he's worth it. Then he's worth keeping around. I don't think he's a central striker. You have to play him there because they've no one else down there with pace. with the physical presence. So, that's of course with the captain of Martial. So I think for them, he's the best of a bad bunch at the moment. But it's not just him, it's midfield. Midfield has to give United more. Take a look at this. United have one goal in the Premier League this season from midfield. That's not good enough, Colm. Bruno Fernandes is the only player to have scored from. Scott McTominay scored against Nicosia, right? But I'm talking about in the Premier League. So basically, you're sitting on Bruno, 1 goal, 1 assist. McTominay, 0 goal, 0 assist. Eriksen, 2 assists. Casemiro, 1 assist. That's not good enough, right? Phil Foden scored a hat-trick against United. That means he scored more goals in one game than all of United's midfield combined. It's not good enough. Midfield has to give more. And Bruno Fernandes has been poor for a while. And I'm saying since he's taken that captain's armband, or at least since the start of the season, he's been nowhere near the levels of the past that United need him to be at. If United are going to finish in the top 4, they're going to need to score 60 plus goals. That means midfield is going to have to seriously chip in. So when you're sitting here looking at Bruno Fernandes, 1 goal, 1 assist, no goals from any other midfielders, not good enough.
But if we're looking at the team at the moment, do you think we would benefit from a change in formation? Because you're saying that the midfield aren't chipping in. There needs to be, like, the players we have in midfield are all capable of chipping in with goals and assists. Mm-hmm. I think we can safely say that. I mean, do we need to look at a change in formation? Do we need to look at something different? Is maybe this system Ten Hag's using not working? It's a possibility, and that's not a criticism of Ten Hag.
I don't think so.
It's a criticism of the system more than anything.
I don't think United could have a more attack-minded midfield than Eriksen, Bruno Fernandes and a holding midfielder. I mean, if you look back at Rangnick and previous managers, he was getting pillared for playing Fred and McTominay. 2 basically defensive midfielders. So it's hard to see how they could be more attack-minded than what they are, without completely tipping the balance. Newcastle has the best defensive record in the league. So they're hard to break down. And a 3 points against Newcastle would have been a brilliant 3 points, right? This is a Newcastle that hit 5 and 4 the week before. Newcastle that took points off Man City, hit 3 against Man City, and admitted they were at home. So, I don't think it's a disgrace to draw 0-0 at home in a game where the second half United really dominated the game, in my opinion. I think there was some disgraceful refereeing, a truly appalling refereeing performance, in my opinion, and really bizarre. Jadon Sancho's is a penalty. There's no doubt about that. And yet you see these decisions being given week in, week out somewhere else. You see, if that happens anywhere else on the pitch, that's a free kick, right? You're seeing Dan Burn should have been sent off at the weekend. How he got away when Anthony flicked it over his head and he grabbed him and poked him in the eye, essentially. How he got away with not getting a yellow card. Think about what Dowell got a yellow card for against Man City. Think about what Molasses got a yellow card for Man City. How on earth do you see that? And if he gets booked, he's sent off. These things matter, right? So, there's so many appalling decisions, and I can't stand the posturing. I see referees, I think they love their moment in the sun. When that VAR check's happening, the camera's on them, and I'm looking at this going, this is why you don't turn referees into celebrities. This is why you don't have Mark Clattenburgs and Jeff Winters and all this doing, Graham Poll and all this doing TV and selling books and everything else, right? Make Dean's a celebrity, right? This is why you don't do this. It goes to their head. And all of a sudden it's about them. I'm going to wait 3 minutes to make this decision because the focus is on me. I'm not saying that's what happening every time, but I'm looking at decisions in the Premier League every week that I mean, perfect example. You look at the penalty was given against United by Real Sociedad, right? I've seen about 15 situations since then where penalties weren't given for exactly the same thing. United could have conceded a penalty early too for Cam Wilson. Completely accept that. Also, there was nothing wrong with that free kick that Ronaldo took around the keeper and scored. They took that, right?
I think it's safe to say that the standard of the refereeing in the Premier League is the worst. The standard of refereeing is the worst in Europe. It's shocking. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no consistency whatsoever, especially from the VAR. Why can VAR not look at that Ronaldo goal and say that's clearly a goal? He's touched the ball. Mm-hmm. In terms of the penalties, it's a Stonewall penalty on Sancho. It's a penalty on Ronaldo. These decisions aren't being given. In other leagues, they're being given, and that's you've touched on it there. Sociedad, it's not given. There's no consistency. The
Well,
Premier League's refereeing system is shocking, and
remember,
there's never any comeuppance. That why are they not coming out after the game being interviewed? Why is that not a thing where the referee is under the spotlight? Because they should be. If you make a decision, rightly or wrongly, you should be able to explain yourself. Because we're still left here wondering why it wasn't given.
well, you take a look at Ederson against Crystal Palace. Palace were 2-0 up at Man City. Ederson throws the ball out. I can't even remember if it was Zaha or whatever. Taps the ball in the net. It was the most blatantly obvious goal you could... I mean, it wasn't even difficult. And they didn't give it. Now, Palace end up losing that game. If they're 3-0 up, it's a different game. This is having a massive impact on results. And I mean, I think back to last season, Man City Everton, Rodri's handball in the box, where Frank Lampard got an apology, but City got the points. I know what I'd rather have. Now, that was a massive moment in the race for the Premier League, and it wasn't given on VAR. How can you look at that? I am now being told that you cannot gain an advantage from a handball in the box, deliberate or not, and score. Well, how the fuck did you give the goal against the FA Cup in Middlesbrough? How? It's a blatant... I mean, he controls it with his hand, brings it down, shoots and scores, and you don't give it?
Mate, I'm going to let you talk to yourself for 1 second because my internet's just about to go out. They're doing work outside.
More than 1
it's
second.
literally circling on my screen. Give us 1 second.
All right, I'll let you reconnect. I think there was something that was very telling that Arsene Wenger said before the Man City game that I think had an impact on the result at the weekend. Arsene Wenger was saying one of the reasons why Eriksen was so important to Manchester United is when you shut Bruno Fernandes down, previous teams before you had someone like Eriksen, United were quite predictable. They'd go wide a lot, launch a ball in the box, and hope to get somebody on the end of it. I felt that they were doing that against Newcastle at the weekend. I felt that without Eriksen, he was badly missed. I think that had a big impact on the result. I was just saying there that Arsene Wenger was saying before the City game, one of the reasons why Christian Eriksen was so important to United is if you shut Bruno Fernandes down in a game, they became somewhat one-dimensional. They would knock the ball away, throw the ball in the box and hope to get somebody out of it. I thought you saw that the weekend with Fred, where United became a bit too predictable against a team that has the best defence in the league. You need a Christian Eriksen in a game like that.
I agree with you. I think the problem with Fred is, and this is again my opinion, and I might get slammed for it, but I think in a team that presses, Fred is great. In a team that controls possession, Fred is shocking because he doesn't have the license to roam like Bruno has to roam. If Fred was in Bruno's position, we'd see him more effective. And we see that whenever he played for Shakhtar, and we see that
I don't think he has a technique to play that.
No,
really.
he does because
I've often.
No, I agree. In possession, he's not good on the ball, but if he plays further forward and he's given a license to roam and he's more free flowing, he is good. It's whenever he's in that position, he's holding midfield. He's like Bambi on ice at times.
To be fair, the defensive midfield position, you have to be really good, because if you look at the way you typically receive the ball in defensive midfield, you have your back to the opposition a lot, and if you're technically lacking, you lose the ball in key areas that is really dangerous. You saw this. United tried to play it from the back at the weekend. They got caught. Technically not good enough to get out of tight situations. And so when I look at this, I'm not sure Fred or McTominay. I think Casemiro, although he's been somewhat good, somewhat bad, I think he is technically more suited to play in that role, because I just don't think Fred or McTominay have the technique to play in that role and get away with it. I also don't think they have tremendous defensive discipline. McTominay obviously offers something that Fred doesn't. He offers height, he offers physicality. That's really important. Because United need that, and they need, and that's obviously why he plays. I never understood why people are confused as to why Scott McTominay plays. I assume they don't watch United. Well, I also talk about the game coming up against Spurs. Because this is another very difficult game. And when you look at this, we're sitting here in October. United will have played Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea. That's a hard start.
It's getting all the hard games out the way, and to be honest, the Spurs game is very important because we're at home and then we're away to Chelsea. Those are two extremely important games. I mean, Chelsea are playing good football. Spurs are playing okay as well, and Spurs obviously we need to get 3 points out of these two games. I can't see us winning both, and if we do, it's a miracle. But get 3 points out of these two games, and to me, that's a result. At the moment, with how United are playing, I'd be happy with 3 points out of these two games. I mean, two draws now. You need to get a win out of these two games. Spurs are going to be hard to come up against because the way Conte has them playing at the moment, and especially on the counter-attack against us, I could see them doing damage. Chelsea as well, you've just said it, Chelsea are playing great football at the moment. Obviously, with Aubameyang in attack, you've got, I think they're playing Pulisic and Sterling either side of him. So, I mean, even at midfield, Chelsea's midfield, to try and stop Mason Mount, it's tough at the minute. So, I definitely can't see Fred playing. I think we need Scott McTominay in midfield. We need his, obviously, physical attributes more so than anything against a team like Chelsea. Is he able to play against Spurs? I think he is. He's back, isn't it? It was only a 1-game suspension.
Oh, he's suspended for the Spurs game. That's right.
He's suspended for that, is he?
Yeah, and that's a big loss because one of the things you get with a Conte team is you get physicality, you get intensity, right? And so that's a really difficult game for United. I mean, I think United, we have to understand where United are at. They're nowhere near the level they need to be at to where you can be going into these games with confidence because they're still inconsistent. I think Ten Hag has done a really good job so far. I think every time there's been a negative, there's been a reaction to it, which I love. Like, I mean, after Brentford, there was a perfect reaction. After City, there was a perfect reaction. You see this with subs coming on the pitch that are desperate to play their way into the team. Subs coming on scoring goals. McTominay coming on scoring goals against Nicosia. Ronaldo coming on scoring a goal against Everton. You know, we see this a lot with players, you know, coming off the bench scoring goals. Rashford, did he come on from Martial? I can't remember. Against Everton, should have scored, was disallowed, of course. But the point is, you could see this happening a lot where players that are desperate to play their way into the team. Luke Shaw gets a chance, desperate to keep the shirt and play and keep his way in the team. You know, and I think two things have hurt some of the fringe players. That 3-week gap, which meant United could play their strongest team in the Europa League, which makes it harder and harder to play your way into the team if you're Harry Maguire, right, or players like that. And I think the consistency of the players that have started. So I think most weeks when United have a fully fit squad, their team is somewhat predictable about who they're going to pick, and that's exactly how it should be. You know, because you can look at it and go, Ten Hag worked out who his strongest 11 was, the strongest 9 anyway, by the end of September. And I think this is a guy, like Luke Shaw said, everything's being done on merit. How many decisions is he made? I know you can just talk about in-game decisions. I wouldn't agree with that, but how many major decisions do you think Ten Hag's got wrong?
Not many, and only the in-game decisions, like the likes of taking Ronaldo off. Just in that moment, I think you would have kept Ronaldo on, in my opinion. But big decisions, you're right. But this is where I think the incompetence from above is affecting us because the strength and depth just isn't there. You look at the bench and you're wondering, like, do you bring Garnacho on for Anthony? Is that really going to be the type of substitution that's going to light up the game? Probably not. But he's the only kind of one you're looking at. Alanga, again, I don't know, he would have benefited from being out on loan, I think, this season. So, to me, the strength and depth is going to hurt us even more as we go down the season. Because you're saying you don't think we're going to sign anyone in January after the World Cup. I disagree. I think you have to, especially this season with the World Cup and how the second half of the season is just so much more important, so much more congested with games. You're going to need more strength and depth, and that's something that we're lacking.
The problem is, Colm, where's the money coming from? Ten Hag's going to get the same answers that Ralph Rangnick got last January, and United needed players then. United badly needed players then. But you sit there, you look at what United have talked about before, even when they released their financials there a while ago, and the statement from John Murdoch, you know, we don't look at January transfer window as part of our recruitment strategy. Now, obviously, if you need someone gets badly injured, what have you, then okay. But it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where United will go into the market, because if they're sitting in the top four relatively comfortably, they'll not feel the urgency to go out and sign anyone. And if they're not,
Will we be comfortable in the top
no, I
four?
don't think.
No.
I think it'll be tight. I think if you look at the first after, if you look, so Ten Hag's really still in that find out stage of his job, right, where he's still learning a lot about the teams he's playing against, about his own team, about different. I think he has to at least be given his first season as a find out season. He knows he has to win. I mean, he spent 220 million this summer, so I'm not saying that he shouldn't be held accountable for results. I'm not saying he shouldn't be held accountable for performances and everything, but I think he has to be given the chance to fix the mistakes in the team. This is my concern with United always, is will they still have the same sense of urgency? Let's say United finish second, because I think second's wide open, right? I really do. And it wouldn't surprise me to be sitting talking about Arsenal 2 months from now having not won a game for 7 games or something like that. It would not surprise me at all that they go on that their arse drops out, because that's Arsenal. So I think second is wide open. Let's say United are sitting in second, do what they did under Solskjaer. If you look at when they've done that, Mourinho, Solskjaer, they've always followed that summer up with parsimony, with not going out and strengthening, because they lose that sense of urgency that they need to spend, that something needs to be done. I mean, you look at this transfer window. They panicked after Brentford. The budget completely changed. The budget basically doubled after Brentford. Remember the story about the players going up and saying, pleading with the Glazers to sign players, everyone? All of a sudden, they go from, Rabiot, Arnautovic to Casemiro and Antony. So there was a dramatic shift based on results and the concern that United were in serious, serious trouble. There was other pressure being put on by sponsors and everything else, don't get this right, by international rights holders and what have you. To borrow one of your phrases, I just still think United are a reactionary football club and are very poor at being proactive and investing in their future. They invest in the right now. They're a band-aid, a plaster football club. But if you say the Glazers invest 150 million this summer, you'll not get returns on it for like another year or two. I doubt they'll do that. They should do that, right? And this is going to be really the test as to whether Ten Hag can execute on what he needs to do to fix this football club.
But is it not, like, we can't be sitting here this time next season and say we're still waiting on a striker. We need to have a striker in. So whether that's January, in my opinion, the best time to do it is January, because Ronaldo, he's fallen off. Is he going to leave in January? Who knows? Even if he doesn't, still think we need one more in. So rather than be reactionary, we need to be proactive in the window, and we need to have a striker in.
I agree.
Because at the end of next season, we can't be sitting here saying, we finished second, it was great. But if we had that striker who could have got us an extra 15 goals between January and the end of the season, it could be a totally different outcome. And you've said there as well about how we've become, we're happy enough for that second, we're not going to spend money. We need to be the opposite of that. We need to be, okay, let's invest, let's get the top spot, let's put money into this team, because we're on the cusp of it, not waiting. What's the point in waiting? Look at where we are now.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, imagine if they'd signed Vlahovic in January or Luis Diaz in January, right? Which they should have done. And so maybe they don't give Ten Hag the same answer because he's a long-term manager and Rangnick wasn't. But if they turn around, if like Sesko is available in January for, I don't know, 60 million, right? They'd be insane not to pursue him. Because all you're going to do is put it off for 6 months. This is a guy I'm going to go for in 6 months. But it'll come out of next summer's budget, so if you need to go out and send a £60 million striker or thereabouts in January, then that's obviously going to come out of next summer's budget. But there's variables, all depends on who owns the football club and all that there. I think what will determine United's January transfer window capability will be a lot of what happens in the financial markets over the next few months, and that volatility. If we are in a tsunami of hurt, as Elon Musk said, then I don't see that happening. I also think that other football clubs won't be immune to it, and you're going to see some recalibration of transfer fees and transfer valuations, simply because there just won't be the money around that there was before.
But then what happens? So if we don't buy anyone this time next year. We're in the exact same position.
Oh, they
In
have
fact,
to definitely do it.
we're probably worse off. So if you're telling me we're going to wait until the summer, I think that's a wrong move. Because then we're going to be in exactly the same situation as we are now. We're going to be scrambling for a striker next summer because, you know what, everyone else is putting up their prices. United need a striker. They've lost Ronaldo. That's the situation we're faced with.
Here's the thing. United would be happy to sacrifice Ronaldo, right? But has Ronaldo done anything since he wanted to leave that would indicate he's a player at the top of his game? Ronaldo could go to a football club that plays in the Champions League, but he can't go to a football club that wants to win the Champions League and is serious about winning it. So the question then becomes, who right now, obviously if he goes and has a good World Cup, that will change things. And he desperately needs a good World Cup to be able to turn around and say, see, it's not me, it's Man United, right? And if he does have a good World Cup, there'll be interest in him in January, no question. But I look at Ronaldo, hasn't scored in 7 of Portugal's last 8 games, right? There's even talk in Portugal about not taking him to the World Cup. I do a podcast with Zach Lowy, who is, quite frankly, an encyclopedia in Portuguese football. And the views on Ronaldo from people like him who know Portuguese football are quite pejorative. So I'm looking at this and going, what's the probability that Ronaldo's going to go light this World Cup up? Not high, right, in my opinion. Because my eyes don't deceive me. I can see what his problems are. But in my opinion, the best thing Cristiano Ronaldo could do for his career is shut his mouth, stay at Manchester United and try to find a way back into the football club, because that to me is the best chance he has of playing Champions League football next season. But I
so
think
you genuinely think there's a possibility?
I think Ten Hag's desperate to get rid of him.
But do you think there's a possibility he could be there next season?
No.
There's no chance.
No. There's no way. Ten Hag wants him out. Right? You can't have a guy in there questioning your methods. You can't have a guy in there doing that when he's brought off. Right? I mean, if I was coaching an under-12 team and a kid did that, I'd have a word with him after the game. I would turn around and say, son, that petulance, right, is disrespectful to your teammates. Why don't you imagine how it feels for the guy coming on? I mean, it's so disrespectful, right? And it's like, what does that say to Rashford? It also puts unnecessary pressure on players, because you're also now trying to prove a point to Ronaldo as much as you're trying to prove a point to United fans and Ten Hag, everyone else. You know, you make 2 guys fight over a penalty. The pressure now on the taker is so much higher, because what's in the back of his head? I got to prove a point to the guy trying to take a ball off me, right? And so this is where I feel that Ronaldo behaved like a brat, and I don't want to make this whole podcast about Ronaldo, but in the summer, and he got egg on his face because he couldn't find a football club interested in taking him. Maybe he wants to have a bit of self-awareness and go, maybe I'm not the player I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right? And so there's no top clubs that will take him, in my opinion. Anyway, another quite, before we get to questions, another quite disturbing development over the weekend, of course, and we'll have to tread carefully here, but we'll comment on it briefly, was the Mason Greenwood situation. Mason Greenwood is looking at serious prison time.
I don't know what we can and can't say about this, but I think he's in a whole world of trouble. I think a bit like the Mendy situation at City, United haven't reacted by sacking him yet because he is technically innocent until proven guilty. But I think Mason Greenwood's days as a Manchester United player are done, dusted, see you later. 100%. I think his days as a Premier League footballer are done, dusted, see you later. You can only hope for some sort of situation where he avoids prison time. I'm not sure how he does that, but yeah, in my opinion, it's done and dusted, and I don't know what else we can really say about it, to be honest.
I mean, I'm going to wrap this up quickly, but what's sort of odd is in March, the GMP were considering dropping charges, and this is what I was reliably told by someone. So clearly they've acquired evidence to make these charges stick. So he's in big trouble, and the tragedy, of course, isn't that Mason Greenwood loses his career. It's that there was a young woman who was a victim, and if this was my sister, my daughter, I would cave his head in. And that's what you have to think about here. It's not Manchester United aren't the victims here. Mason Greenwood isn't the victims here. Manchester United fans are not the victims here. That young lady is. And I think it's incumbent upon football clubs to make sure that they offer services to people who are victims of their employees' abuse. In my opinion, I think United need to make sure they support her. I think United have handled it impeccably well, and they've done the right thing from the outset. And I'm not going to comment on Mason Greenwood's whether he's guilty or is anything to exculpate him, but what an unbelievably tragic story for that young lady, and it has to be made clear to people, footballers, athletes who are surrounded by enablers, that this behaviour will not be tolerated and you will be outed. I have no doubt there's a lot more people in football with similar stories to Mason Greenwood, I've no doubt. And I've no doubt that the law doesn't get applied equally in certain situations because of enablers. But Mason Greenwood is finished to me, and I never ever want to see the kid near a Manchester United shirt again. In fact, I'd like to forget that he ever played for the football club. Because all I can think about is, what if that was my daughter? Anyway.
It's true. I don't have any comments to make on it. I mean, you've put it fair enough there. Don't think there's anything else to add on that one.
I think we have some questions, folks. A lot of the questions are about United and the buyout. I commented on it on Friday on the podcast. It's still pinned to my page, so really isn't much more to add on it since then. That would be the best resource for what I know and what I've been told, and I would just point you to that. There's no point in really answering more questions. Interesting development. Just quickly comment on this. Was something we talked about before on this podcast that I said was a certain inevitability. So that United are probably going to play in a pre-season competition in the US, where there's going to be groups and everything else. And this, of course, is the next step and probably the final step towards competitive fixtures being played abroad. Whatever you see in US sports is coming to UK sports, 100%. And that is another purest tradition that's ready to be sacrificed. I said within 5 years, and the only thing I'm not sure about is whether it'll be sooner than that.
I don't think it's a bad thing for once a season to showcase it, because I think it's fair that there's people like you that don't get to go and watch United every week. You're a lifelong United fan. You don't get to watch United.
But I moved. United shouldn't.
No.
I think it's good to see pre-season. I don't want to see competitive fixtures, mate.
It'll ever move, but I do think there comes a point where, because of the size of Manchester United, because of the size of the Premier League, because of the reach of the Premier League, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It happened in the NFL with it coming to the UK. It is going to happen in football. I think it should be like the NFL, where one team goes every 3 years. Like, for example, the New York Giants, when we just back there last time they were here was like 6 years ago. I don't think it should be a regular occurrence that United go every season. I think it should be spread out amongst the 20 clubs. And if it's going to happen, I'm saying I don't think it should happen, in my opinion, but I think it will happen, is what I'm saying. And I think that at least once a season, it's going to happen in terms of a team going there. And I think, obviously, with United are probably the biggest in America. So it's going to be those that are going. And look, it's like this. See, in the UK, you can't watch a 3 p.m. game. The sooner that rule gets scrapped, the better.
Yeah,
you have to be able to watch a 3 p.m. game. Everyone in the UK should have the accessibility to be able to watch Manchester United every game of the season if you want to. Like, it just doesn't make sense. We're in 2022. It's crazy. So if you're going to start moving games away, they need to bring in this rule where they scrap that blackout at 3 p.m. because that's shocking.
Mate, see, when I wake up on a Saturday morning, 8 here, I can watch any Premier League match that I want. I can watch any La Liga match, any Serie A match. I mean, I'm talking about any league, Scotland, Scottish Premier League. I'm sitting there, and still I watch Debbie Does Dallas. But I can watch any Premier League football match I want, and it's an a la carte menu, right? I get better coverage out here than what you get.
But that's a disgrace.
I know, it's totally unacceptable, and so I mean, is it really deterring people from going to games? But to be fair, they have NFL blackouts here, right? So that you would get that we wouldn't get, to try to protect that. But I don't see. Look, there was a documentary done, I think it was in the early 90s, that was quite prescient, that showed individuals talking about how perfidious the influence will be of television on scheduling and football sport, football in general, and they were absolutely right. So that trajectory isn't changing. So eventually, I mean, you take a look at the United Chelsea game. Absolutely disgraceful situation where they couldn't agree on a kick-off time, and then the police limit Manchester United, how many Manchester United fans can go there.
It's
Right?
an absolute
Because
disgrace.
no
By the way,
United are
United
notorious.
handled that perfectly, though.
Yeah, but again, this is a television issue, right? And so you've got games being scheduled in London between two teams from the north of England on a Sunday night, maybe an FA Cup semi-final or something, and the game's over when the last train's already gone back. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, where TV, eventually that embargo will get broken. Once it's of value to the television companies to break that, then that I will definitely go. Another question that we were asked on here was, Eric Ten Hag may continue to do, for instance from Ben Allen, do a good job but still not make top four, looking at the resurgence of Arsenal, Spurs. Surely lack of top four kills the Glazers. The punitive measures of not finishing top four this season are far more severe than any other. And the Glazers are already at a very difficult point, precipice. I think they'll finish whether United finish top four or not, simply because United are at a point where they need such the lack of investment in the infrastructure of the football club has reached such a critical point now, where United so desperately need that, and they don't have the resources to do it. So for the changes for the things that United need to spend on and the resources that they need, I mean, Richard Arnold's, I don't have to take my word for it, Richard Arnold told you this, that money's just not there. So I honestly feel that not qualifying for the Champions League would be devastating in a year when United are renegotiating that Adidas deal. If United are going into that negotiation from a position of weakness, having not qualified for the Champions League again, then the only thing that's going to happen is Adidas will make sure, if they renew, Nike didn't renew, and I don't believe United are commercially and reputationally in a better position today than what they were when they negotiated that Adidas deal in 2014. So is their value, is their fan equity really that much more valuable commercially? I don't think so. So I honestly think it is so important for the Glazers to make sure United finish top four, not just to avoid the penalty that Adidas will impose, but to make sure the value of that contract renewal remains intact, and that is worth a significant amount of money to Manchester United in the future. See, these are the things that will be spooking the Glazers.
Does that not counteract what you've said, though, in terms of not spending in January? Because if they need to spend in January in order for us to finish top four, then surely it's within their best interest to do so.
Depends, because it depends where United are at, right? So if United are sitting just on the fringes of top four, they might turn around and say, look, we've already given this guy 220 million. We expect to finish top four, which I think is a reasonable expectation with what they've spent this summer, and say, go prove it before we give you another 60 million to spend. If they're comfortably inside the top four, they're not going to see the need to spend. So it's going to depend on the fitness of certain players. It's going to depend on where United are at in the league. If they're miles off top four, what would be the point? I don't think they will be. It all depends on what happens at the World Cup with players. There's so many variables and where the Glazers are at with regards to ownership of the football club. If they are confident that that football club is going to be sold, and I've made this analogy before, this is like fattening up the cow before slaughter, and the cow thinks the farmer is his friend when he's being fattened up, but doesn't realise the reason why. It's very possible that they will allow United to borrow more money that they aren't paying back to go buy another player. Casemiro, to me, was evidence that the Glazers don't intend to be around. They wouldn't sign Holland because of resale value, right? So you're walking away from the best young players in the world due to resale value. You wouldn't sign Thiago Alcantara because he was 29 and wanted a 4-year contract. But yet you agree an 80 million deal for Casemiro, who has no resale value. You only do that if, one, you're not paying for it, and two, you're not going to be around to realise the depreciation. That's somebody else's problem. So I think that if United spend big in January, that is not an indication that the Glazers aren't selling. That to me would be more of an indication that they don't intend paying that bill.
But then where does that leave us? Because if, for example, they don't spend in January, right? We don't finish top 4.
Yeah,
it affects the resale value, and they don't sell the club. Then we're back to square one. So where does the buck stop then?
It doesn't really affect the resale value because here's the thing: the people that are going to buy United are multi-billionaires. They're not going to be put off by United finishing 5th. They're not going to be put off by United even finishing mid-table. I mean, you've got clubs that are in the bottom half of the table being sold easily. Oh, so United's value is in their brand, the recognition of their brand globally. That gives you a tremendous platform to punt other things, to use them as a proxy if you want to promote your NFL team, you want to promote your baseball team, your own whatever, right? So I get what you're saying. I think for people like Jim Ratcliffe, it might affect the price because they are trying to get an honest evaluation on what United are worth. And
but certainly, my point, sorry.
Well, just want to finish this because I do believe United's early form spooked the Glazers, right? Where they invested to make sure, because the United in the bottom 3 is a catastrophe, and that really would affect the price. But if it's a question of 4th and 7th, I don't think it would.
But your point there, sorry, I'm just confused because you've said the Glazers need to have Manchester United in the top 4 for the commercial value that they'll get for the club.
If they're going to keep the club, yes. If for
the brand partnerships,
100%.
So to sell the club, they don't care.
Now, so what it would do is it would force their hand quicker to sell a football club because the football club would need investment, right? To carry on its basic function, to make sure they continue to take out dividends that would need money. So, you know, and in a market where borrowing money is costing you twice as much as what it was a year ago, that's not a position of strength. And obviously any potential buyer will take advantage of that desperation. And it would certainly help force the hand of Joel Glazer, because if you turn around to Joel Glazer and say, all right, to keep this football club, Joel, you're going to need to find 700 million from somewhere, and you've got nobody willing to invest in a partial takeover or partial investment of the football club without a long-term strategy of takeover, where are you getting the money, mate? So then the incentive to own the football club dramatically changes. So then they sit down and they go, well, wait a minute, this football club's value will plummet if we don't continue to invest, because there's an inevitable consequence. So if United are sitting the bottom 3 or bottom half of the table, where they're so bad, where they're getting slaughtered every week by ex-players, by sponsors will take nothing to do with that. But if cruising altitude for United is somewhere around the top 4 where they're not so bad, where it's not provoking all this, you know, toxic reaction, then they could plausibly ride that out. But you know, they need money, and so losing large commercial contracts is absolutely devastating to their intention, to the desire to hold on to the football club in the long term. So it would put them in a position of weakness if the football clubs, you know, if they borderline insolvent under their ownership, where United need to continue to borrow just to survive. So I don't think you can realistically compete with teams in the Premier League doing that, because United will need to spend quite big again next summer. They'll need to buy, you know, another defensive midfielder, in my opinion, to get rid of Fred, which I'm sure they will. They'll need to spend on a striker. They'll need to probably get another right back. So, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done there, and a lot of expensive work.
Another question from Ben Allen's about, do we need some proper old-fashioned width on one side, not inverted wingers? I actually do, and that was the point that I touched on last week in terms of Anthony. And I think Garnacho is probably more of that. To me, you know, we looked at Anthony at the weekend, and another question here from Connor Higgins is, do you think it would be better for Anthony to play on the left-hand side because he can't use his right foot? Yeah. And I mean, is that something that we need to look at with Anthony? I know he has played out in the right, and I know he's good at cutting inside, but his right foot is non-existent.
Yeah, look, he was switched over on the right against Nicosia for a while. Of course, depends on what you want from him. People like to play right footers on the left as they cut inside, or left footers on the right because they cut inside. Some people like to have that natural width. But I think if you look at how Ten Hag wants his wide players to play, similar to Solskjaer in the sense that he wants them to attack down the channels. This is what Guardiola does too, where he has his wingers tuck in and leave that space for your left winger, your left wing back, your right wing back, and attack the channels and support the striker. I remember when Spurs came to Old Trafford and murdered them 6-1. It was all to do with Lucas Moura and Son attacking the channels inside, and what was happening was Luke Shaw was getting dragged. Way too wide, and the massive gaps between the left back and the centre back were being attacked. So you can stretch the game by playing wingers, but you have to have people that are attacking that space. Otherwise, if a winger just stretches the game, it just narrows the space that he has to play in because they're easy to mark. So to me, I think the inverted wingers are, and I honestly think for Jadon Sancho, who to me, we talked about this last week, was probably more of a false nine than a winger because he doesn't have the pace to be a winger. That is his best position, but there's a player that United need to get more from. It hasn't really recovered since United had that break. He was poor again, in my opinion, at the weekend. And you look at United rivals and what they're getting out of players in that position, and I rate Jadon Sancho, and I think he will come good. This really is a time now for him to step up and show he's an £85 million footballer, because United need him in games like, when you buy an £85 million player, you're not buying him to get you a goal against Norwich. You're not buying him to get you a goal against Bournemouth. You're buying him to make the difference in games like this, and that's where they need to show their quality.
But do you think, in your opinion, that these fullbacks need to be given us more? Because I think they do. I think going forward, we're lacking in that. You look at the good teams like Liverpool, Man City at the moment. Their fullbacks are pivotal to what they're doing, whereas our fullbacks aren't. And I think that's very important going forward, that we have two fullbacks who are attacking, who have that attack-minded awareness, because at the moment it's just not there.
Well, I think Dalot has been the best form he's ever been at United, right?
Yeah.
And I think that between
still
him
don't think he's starting right back.
No, probably not. Probably United need better quality in that position, right? And I think United are in the healthiest position they've been in at left back for a while with Shaw and Malacia. Now, the thing is, do United get enough of their fullbacks going forward? Before I worry about what Shaw and Malacia and Dalot and Wan-Bissaka is giving me, I'm going back to my midfield. What are you doing? Are you doing your job? They're defenders. Yes, they have to give United width and options going forward, but if my central players aren't scoring goals, they're not taking chances, then Shaw, Dalot, Malacia, whoever plays there is going to look bad. They're going to be primarily rated on their assists. That requires people to finish those chances. Rashford requires you to finish that chance, right? Fred requires you to finish that chance, right? Those are those are going to have a big impact on how we evaluate, because the metrics of evaluating fullbacks have completely changed, right? And that position has completely changed. So to me, I think that requires other players also stepping up. And when I'm going to look at what United need more from in terms of goals, I'm looking at that midfield.
I know what you're saying about the midfield, but I think Bruno would benefit from a couple of games dropped. I think we've seen Shaw come back into it and be almost a different player to what we've seen before. I think Bruno at the moment, he's finding it tough. We've seen the best of Bruno. We've also seen the worst at the moment. I think he would benefit from a few games out of the team. And again, who do you replace him with? Do you play Eriksen in that position? In my opinion, probably. You play Eriksen in that Bruno role.
And then he had 3 weeks off, mate. I mean,
no, I know, but 3 weeks off. 3 weeks off's fine, but then you're walking back into a team when you're still.
But honest question, why do you think? Why do you like? If you go back to what we were saying earlier about Wenger, right? You need 2 creative midfielders, and you need to have no one that's in the caliber of a Fernandes or an Eriksen that's capable of coming in and taking that role and saying, Bruno, sit there for a while, that you would trust, in my opinion. Iqbal, you can't judge a player on pre-season, mate. right? The difference is massive, right? Good young player, but Garnacho, those players need loans. Palestri needs a loan. We're wasting their time sitting on the bench. I'm a bit surprised Garnacho hasn't got more game time because I thought he had a really good pre-season and he's excited me when he's played. So I'm a bit surprised that he hasn't played more, especially when Alanga was getting game time at the beginning of the season. So, and either he's good enough to play, and if he's not, you loan him out. Obviously Garnacho has a contract situation. His contract's up at the end of the season, so United want to get that tied down. But I'm a bit surprised he hasn't played more, to be honest. But anything else before we do Spurs predictions?
Nothing else that we need to touch on. I think mostly it was all around the Glazers, and we covered most of that. I know someone there said Donny van de Beek. I think that's hilarious.
Nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're going to have promos on these beautiful shirts soon, folks. So keep an eye out on it. Finest gear. So we'll get these on the internet very shortly for people who want to purchase them. We've got hats and everything else, so looking forward to getting these out. Big massive thank you to SB Sports, Donna Kieran Trippier. SB Sports for their support of BTP, support of the show, and support of our also mental health partner. We really appreciate that. And of course, West Wellbeing, our mental health partner, means so much to us too. So the financial, any money made from these shirts and hats, what have you, will 100% go to our mental health partner. Mate, predictions for Spurs?
I think we'll win 2-1. I think we'll be 1-0 down at half time, come back into the game, win 2-1. Just have a feeling we're going to start poorly. If
United win that game, it'll be a fantastic 3 points. Big 2 games. Someone said Chelsea are playing shade. I don't know. They look like they're doing all right to me on their green pattern. But we shall see. All right, leave it there, folks. Thanks to all of you for all the downloads. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to Beyond the Pitch on there. You get all our podcasts free. You get all of our content free. If you are on iTunes or any major podcast supplier, please subscribe. We also have a Facebook page and all that there. If you could subscribe to that, that's what keeps this podcast free. That support allows us to bring this content free. And without subscribers, we aren't here. So thanks to you for all the love. Thanks for all the follows. Thanks for everything else. I hope your mental health is good. And take it easy, folks.